open book. So if you ever want to stop me and stop my little talk, that's fine with me. I'd like to try to keep it as casual as possible. But the one thing that I like to do is I went to the original Carrabbas this morning, and I was kind of pretty typical of me in school. I always waited to the last minute to prepare. So I'm very consistent. So I didn't prepare, but I went to the original Carrabbas today, and it's 32 and a half years old, and my managing partner, Ramel, he's been with me 24 years, and I said, Ramel, I'm giving a talk at the Texas Restaurant Association, convention. I said, what should I talk about? And knowing Italians, we're never lost for words, but I was a little lost of what I'm going to talk about. He goes, the best thing to do is always tell them your story. And that's really what I'd like to do, is I like to just tell you a story because there's a story in the story. And first of all, I'm born and raised here in Houston, Texas. Came from an immigrant family. My family came from, Sicily. And so I still look at myself as that and my kids laugh at me because I keep on saying I'm an immigrant. But I like to have that immigrant mentality because, it's just hungry, work hard. Most of the people, like my family and, people that come from my part of the world, they believe in small business. So, when my family came over, they farmed cotton around the Bryan, Texas area, the Brazos River. And then my grandfather, he got tired of picking cotton, so he moved to Houston, and he eventually got into the grocery store business. So I was raised in the grocery store business. Small neighborhood grocery store, probably about the size of this area right here, where my dad was the butcher, my grandmother was a cashier. It was in the east end side of Houston, and I learned a lot there. I learned a lot about what a family-owned business is all about. It was a neighborhood where the families would come in and they would, be on credit. They get paid on Friday, cash their checks. My dad would cash the check, they'd pay their bill, and then they get started over. But when you run a family business, you really concentrate on the community, because if you upset that community or you don't do a good job, you're just not going to make it. And so that's really what I try to do every day at my restaurants. The story of Carrabba's really should have never happened. And what I mean by it should have never happened is it was in 1986, worst economic times. And I was very fortunate to have three uncles that were in the restaurant business. They were the Mandola boys. Vincent Mandola, who has Nino's and Pronto and Vincent's. My Uncle Tony Mandola, who was married to still married to a young lady named Phyllis Lorenzo. Her mother was Ninfa. So if it wasn't for Mama Ninfa, God rest her soul, we wouldn't be in the business. And so she was somebody that got us into the restaurant business. And so my uncles, they were in it. Damien Mandola, who's the co-founder of Carrabba's, he was in Huntsville, Texas. You know that, don't you, cousin? But he's in Huntsville, Texas, started a little restaurant. Then he moved to Houston and opened up Damien's on Smith Street. And so I was very fortunate, because I was fortunate to be raised in a family-owned grocery store, learned about that. But then when I was going to college, and I'm not so proud, but I'll go ahead and tell you that I went to college for 6 years, and I'm a college dropout. I wanted to get an accounting degree. But I was fortunate in the sense that when I was going to college, I got to coach at my old high school, which taught me a lot about coaching, and that's kind of what I feel like I am as a coach. But then I also got phone calls from my uncles. And my uncles would say, hey, Johnny, we need a waiter. Johnny, we need an oyster shucker. Johnny, we need a bartender. And I was very fortunate because I got to learn from them. But where I really got fortunate at was I was working for my Uncle Tony Mandola on the Gulf Freeway, and it was Tony Mandola's Blue Oyster Bar. And one Friday, my uncle comes in, and I was about 21, 22 years old. He comes in and he goes, Johnny, he goes, I just signed a lease for a second location. And all I'm doing there is shucking oysters and waiting tables for him. He looked at me, he goes, I want you to be my general manager. And I said, well, Uncle Tony, I'm very flattered, but I don't even really know how to wait tables yet. He goes, no, he goes, I think you have what it takes. I need family there. And he did me a huge favor. He got the place constructed. He kind of shook my hand and said, good luck. But what did I do? I ran it like it was mine. Because some of us had the ownership mentality, but I was very fortunate because of that little grocery store. I acted like it was my little business. Minding my own business, running this little place, Damien Mandola, who's only 6 years older than me, and again, my uncle, he's leaving Damien's on downtown, and he'd go down Shepherd Drive, and he would always stop off, once, twice a week to eat with me late at night. So if you ever look at restaurateurs and their shirts are always pulling, it's because we eat really late at night. When everybody else is home sleeping, that's when we clean our restaurants and eat. And Damien used to stop and eat with me. Well, one night he comes in all excited because Damien is the mastermind, best food man I've ever met when it comes to our style of food. And he's just creative. He's an artist. He comes in the restaurant, hey, Johnny, I just left New York. He goes, man, there's some restaurants there that have wood-burning pizza oven, open kitchens, pasta in big bowls, servers that have, bistro aprons on that are just, have the gift of gab and are very friendly. And then he puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, you want to do it with me? And it was like your mind starts thinking so quickly. I says, I'm kind of perplexed about this. I said, he's asking me to do this. I'm really kind of afraid of family businesses, as far as partnership and family businesses. I know how volatile that can be. I said, but the other thing that I'm really mixed up on is that he's recruiting me from his brother, my uncle, and my boss, and so I didn't really know how to take that. But this is, 33, 34 years ago. It's kind of before we had cell phones on us. And I said, let me think about it. Well, before he got home, I had called his house, the home line, and I said, hey, I'm interested. And I started working at Damien's on Smith Street trying to learn how to cook, which I'm still trying to learn. But we made a great partnership because he was the mastermind and I was the operator, and we had good roles. But the one thing that I try to do, and it's not like you work with me or I'm trying to orientate you, but I believe in great orientations. I do orientations at our place of business. I do them every 3 months. And what I do is I invite all my new people, but then I invite some of the people that have been with me for a long time to rejuvenate them, but also to let them know, don't get away from your roots. Don't get away from your fundamentals. And so that's really kind of about what I would do to you today, telling you the story. We found a location on Kirby Drive, a little 3,000 square foot building. And first thing we do is we start going to the bank. I go to the bank that my grandfather did business with, my dad did business with. We go through the spiel of Damien being the spokesperson naturally, pasta in big bowls, wood-burning pizza oven. You didn't see a lot of that in Houston, Texas back then. I think we were the first, but open kitchen. And all this, moderately priced, good portions. And that Mr. Chip Allen, the banker that's been knowing me since I was born, said no. And I took that personal. But when you're young, you don't want some older person telling you no. So I said, I'm not worried about him. Second bank turned us down. 9 banks turned us down in Houston, Texas. 1986, which was the worst economic times in the history of Houston. And I'm really about done. One day, I'm walking out of the kitchen at Damien's. I happen to be just walking through the dining room to get some air condition, get to cool off from the hot kitchen. And an elderly gentleman stopped me. He goes, Johnny, being the BSer that I can be, I said, yes, sir, how are you doing? He goes, good to see you. How's your new deal working out? And I said, oh, sir, I didn't know his name. I said, sir, it's not going well at all. We've had 9 banks turn us down, and I think we're, since the economy's so bad in Houston, I think we're out of banks. He goes, well, hold on for a second, son. And he reaches in his wallet and he hands me a business card, Rhonda Lewis Omni Bank. Call her. I'm on the board of this bank, and I think you'll like this lady and what she has to say. So naturally, I go call. We go see her, and we walk in, And I want you to kind of bear with me right now. We walk in to the bank, make an appointment, and I said, yeah, I go to the reception, say, yes, ma'am, my name's Johnny Carraba. This is my Uncle Damien Mandola, and we're here to see Rhonda Lewis. She's expecting you. And coming down the lobby of this old-fashioned bank comes this lady. And I said, yes, Rhonda. I said, my name's Johnny Carraba. And I went to go shake her hand. She reached out and hugged me. And so your mind starts thinking quickly again, right? Like, how do I know her? Then I said, this is my Uncle Damien Mandola, and she gives him a huge hug. So we're like walking back to her office like saying, how do you know her? Do you know her? Like, we're like two high school kids want to know how we know this girl. Well, we get back in there and we tell her everything that we're trying to do. She looked at us and she goes, we love to lend money to native Houstonians, and we love lending money to family-owned businesses. Today's Monday, Thursday's our loan committee meeting, and I'm going to bring this up. She goes, but I'm confused. She goes, Johnny, you're running Tony Mandola's Blue Oyster Bar, and that is me and my fiance's favorite little go-to restaurant. She looks at Damien and she goes, and Damien, your restaurant, Damien's, is our favorite. That's where my fiance proposed to me at. So all of a sudden, there's a message in there, right? Well, we open up. She gives us the money. I had to come up with $100,000, so that's how my dad and my mother became partners, because we didn't have two nickels to rub together, so we had to form a partnership with my very frugal dad. But I think his investments paid off for him. So we opened up December 26, 1986. On December 25th, which is usually Christmas the last time I checked, we're having our big family meal, and I'm sitting next to my dad, and I said, Dad, we're going to open up the restaurant tomorrow. He goes, yeah, I know that. I said, well, do you have any money on you? And he goes, yeah, man, but he's a very frugal Italian guy. And he goes, yeah, but what do you need money for? I said, well, I have to open up the cash register. The people in here call it POS. I call it a cash register. And I said, I don't have any money to open it up. So my dad gave me some money that afternoon. So we opened up the next day, and everything, a little 3,000 square foot restaurant, and it was hands-on, working. I mean, you're not my kid, so I think y'all believe me, but, 8 in the morning till 1 in the morning. I was pretty much just an old owner. I was probably pretty much the only person with keys, but I had some very loyal employees that were there many hours with me. And then all of a sudden, Damien called and wanted me to open up a second location. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, because I'm still thinking that old-fashioned immigrant way where we run one shop. We keep it small. We don't think Wall Street and all this other stuff that, intelligent, and not to say we're not intelligent, I'm not going to put my people down, but they think big. We think one shop. Well, I found that location. It was a bad location. It's Woodway and Voss. There's been about, 4 or 5 restaurants that went broke before us. But I had a secret weapon at that location. I've sent my mother Rosie there, and she's been there every day. And so along with her and her great staff, we've overcome the bad location, scenario. And then one day, we're operating restaurants. We have 2 locations, very family-owned, family-operated. And then one day, I started getting phone calls from a lot of the people that, the money people in Houston that wanted to back us up. But I still wasn't interested, because I'm still thinking old-fashioned business. Plus, they might have had money, but they didn't have the know-how of how to grow, and I was doing just good, I was doing great just learning how to run a restaurant. I was still learning myself. But then one day, I get a phone call from Outback Steakhouse. And the young lady that worked for me, she goes, Johnny, there's a Mr. Tim Gannon, one of the founders of Outback, on the phone for you. And I was in the kitchen, naturally. And I said, just take a message for me. But then I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and take this phone call. Let me take this phone call, because I can knock it out and just say no. Because I didn't know what he wanted. I'd never heard of Outback Steakhouse, because I'm a small operator. I don't think about chains. Well, I wanted to knock that phone call out, and Tim Gannon goes, Johnny, my name is Tim Gannon, Outback Steakhouse. I'm one of the founders. Chris Sullivan, our CEO and founder, says that they need another growth vehicle. They were a public company. We have 60 restaurants, and we need another growth vehicle. And I said, well, Tim, if you're looking at us for another growth vehicle, I said, we're going to stay small and family owned. He goes, hear me out a little bit. He goes, it never hurts to talk. It never hurts to listen. He goes, I was dead broke living in Houston, Texas in a garage apartment in West University on Sunset Street. And when I would save enough money, I would go eat at your little place called Carrabba's on Kirby Drive, and I'd sit at the pasta bar. That was my treat. Tim Gannon, Bob Basham, the founders, other founders of Outback, the general guys, they asked me the other day, what restaurant do you really like that we can approach to grow? And I said, hands down, Carrabba's on Kirby Drive. So that's the reason I'm calling you. If you're not interested, that's fine. But these people changed my life, and they're good people. Well, I didn't want to be a testaruda. It means hard-headed in my language. I didn't want to be a hard-headed, and I have a hard time saying no. I said, yeah, come on. They came back down the next day. We entered into a joint venture. And I want to stop with that. Yes, I can say that I still own the two, own the two original Carrabbas. I can say that we have a restaurant called Grace's. I can say that we have 3 restaurants called Mia's. We have 3 more in the works. I can say there's 230 Carrabbas nationwide that Blooming Brand owns. But I would like to just stop there and just let y'all know this is what I tell my people. For one thing, I believe the sky's the limit if you do right. The one thing I would like for you to think about also is, where would I be without my uncles who had confidence in me? I never knew I was going to be, in charge of a Carrabba's, a restaurant with one of them, my uncles. Where would I be without the man, Mr. Minchin, who was sitting in Damien's restaurant, who turned me on? His name was Mr. Minchin. Where would I be if he didn't turn me on to Omni Bank? Where would I be and where would my people be if it wasn't for Rhonda Lewis, who I didn't even know, but loved Tony Mandola's Blue Oyster Bar and recognized me from there because I was acting like an owner? And then where would we be if without Damien running a great restaurant where they got proposed to? And I never knew Tim Gannon. He just happened to be a customer who happened to be sitting at our pasta bar in Carrabba's and recognized the job that we were doing. So what I try to tell my young people is, play the game. No matter what game you play the game hard every play, because you never know who's watching you and who's going to control your destiny. There was an old great baseball player by the name of Joe DiMaggio who was a center fielder for the New York Yankees. And he said, I play the game of baseball hard every play because somebody in the stands might have paid good money for that ticket, and I want to impress them. So, one of the reasons why I do orientations is to give them the history. I also like to teach my people about our fundamentals. A lot of people out in the world think, oh, if you have a great personality or you know how to saute and cook, you can be successful in the restaurant business. It takes a lot more than that. Yes, you need to be really great at food. Yeah, you have to be a personality, you have to be friendly and da-da-da-da. But you also have to be a great business person, because there's a business side of it, isn't it, Chuck? Chuck still here? That's my CFO right there, took a Sunday off to come in. You still have to be a business person. But the one thing that I would like everybody to know is that even 32 and a half years later, I'm still working very, very hard on what we call our fundamentals. At my company, at our company, our fundamentals, and Cindy's my managing director who's here today, but we talk, they've heard it thousands of times, but we work really hard on the fundamentals. The fundamentals of our company is food, service, cleanliness, atmosphere and ambiance, and high morale. But the one thing I tell my young people is I do not worry about high morale. The reason I don't worry about high morale is because high morale is a byproduct of winning. It's hard to have high morale when you're getting your butt kicked. and you're losing. So what I concentrate on and what we all concentrate on as a team is food. It has to be on. Timely food, hot, cold food, cold. Well, I'm a kitchen person. I operated my company out of the kitchen because I feel like the kitchen, the food, is like the heart. If I have a good heart, I'm going to pump blood to the extremities and keep all the vital organs going, all my limbs going. So food is paramount. You have to be top-notch on your food. So I could talk to y'all until next TRA convention here in Houston on food, because that's what I love. Service. I talk to my people about service. That's very fundamental. Yes, I can talk to you until I'm blue in the face about technical service, serving from the left, picking up from the right. I could talk to you about don't put your hands on the mouthpiece. I can talk to you about how to present specials. I can teach you about proper wine service. I mean, I'm not all that great with all that fancy stuff anyhow, but technical service isn't the kind of service that I'm really basically talking about. Yes, it's important to have technical service. A lot of people will recognize that technical talent. But what people are really thinking about, what I'm talking about when it comes to service, is living by the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Having a mentality that yes is the answer, what's the question? Give for the sake of giving and not for the sake of gaining. I'm a firm believer in is I love givers. I don't like takers. But when you take care of somebody, yes, eye contact. It's the same thing I tell my two children. Eye contact's very important. Shaking a hand firmly, remembering somebody's name. And I'm real big into the philosophy, the culture of what is hospitality. I think that America, and I love my country, but I think that we've gotten away from genuine concern. I think we've gotten away from real hospitality. Now, I don't want to insult anybody in the crowd right now, but I could be insulting myself. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't like chain restaurants. Now, somebody say, well, I'm part of a chain restaurant. We run a great company. That's fine. My experience is most likely because I'm part of a chain restaurant, right? Believe it or not. And I don't think they'd like me talking like this, but I believe in warmth. I shouldn't say I don't like chain restaurants because we all make a living off of it, or some of us do. But when you're part of a big company, it's always about the return on investment. It's all about cutting down quality, cutting back on labor. And what I like about a family-owned business, or what I try to do, and not successful all the time, but I try to run a company with warmth. I love to run a company with givers. And I think that pays off in the long run. So when it comes to service, again, you have to kind of be old-fashioned in a way. There's nothing wrong with good old-fashioned service. Cleanliness, again, people recognize cleanliness. Landscaping, clean windows, clean bathrooms, manicured hands, fixed up. Put some attention to your uniform. Give some attention to your present, how you're presented. And so we're big into that. Atmosphere and ambiance. Well, if I ask everybody what's atmosphere and ambiance, most people say lighting, music, furniture, the feel of the place, from a material spot. Yet that's all important. Lighting's very important in the restaurant business, right? Music's very important. But when I talk about atmosphere and ambiance, I'm talking about the way we come and go through that door every day. If I walk in every day at my place of business and all I'm doing is like being just a deadbeat, and I'm kind of volatile at times. I think a couple people know that in this room. But not every day is going to be, like me pumping people up. Some days I have to be very truthful. But if I walk around every day just down, dumb, like always complaining, always griping people out, well, that's the way my children are going to be. So I look at everybody that works with me as my family, as a child in a way. And so I need to set that example of how to shake the hand, how to make people look, how to walk people and show people, pull chairs out, open doors, all that stuff. But more importantly, I have to let them know that we're in the entertainment hospitality business. So all we do every day long, and if we execute food, service, cleanliness, atmosphere, and ambiance, if we execute those every day, guess what? Most likely we're going to win. And when you win, you're going to have fun. And when I tell my young people, who's popping the champagne after the Super Bowl or the World Series or the World Cup? Who's popping the champagne? It's the people that worked hard and they won. How does it look like in the losing locker room? Not real happy. And so in life in general, in our business, you've got to work hard on the attention to detail. So fundamentals, strong principles and beliefs, you have to stay there. And so people can say, I could open this up to questions and answers. But people sometimes say, Johnny, what's your number one threat? What's my number one fear? You know what my number one fear is? The loss of culture. The loss of culture is my number one fear. So I'll go ahead and tell you, Carrabba's is 32 and a half years old. I'm 60 years old. What keeps me involved? I'm more involved now, and I worry about my business more now than ever. Why? Why? Because I have people that have been working with me, people that are counting on me, they're my family, and I'm not going to let them down. But the other thing is that I'm worried, silly, about losing culture. As companies get older, you have a tendency to drop your hands and drop your guard. So I use a lot of analogies with sports, right? Well, we're not the heavyweight champion of the world. We're just a good restaurant, I think, or we've been around for a while. There's not many restaurants that are that old, and we feel like we're at the top of our game. But it's just like a young person that wants to become the heavyweight champion of the world. They had to work their tail off every day as a young kid, and they had to get better and better and better. But what usually happens to that young person who becomes the heavyweight champion of the world, they start basking in the success, and they start reading their own press, and they start doing whatever they think, partying, having a good time, not concentrating on what got them there. And that young kid that grows into that heavyweight champion of the world usually gets knocked out because they drop their guard. They drop their beliefs. They drop their fundamentals. They drop their work ethic. And so I'm intense, to say the least. Now I wear different faces. With my employees, I'm like, hey man, great job, da-da-da, and I try to call them by their name. But then around some of the leaders of my company, it ain't no BS. It's like we have a job to do. And that's the way it's going to be. And so, again, fundamentals, very important. The eye of the tiger, very important. And I would have to say, if somebody said, what's the key to you being in business for 32 and a half years ago? Well, yeah, naturally, I'm going to repeat myself to you. We keep our feet on the ground. We stay humble. Yeah, we work on our fundamentals. Yeah, we have great principles and beliefs. Yeah, we have a fear of losing our job. And a lot of people can say, John, how are you going to lose your job? If I don't mind my business, I don't pay attention, I'm going to lose my job. And I'm not going to be able to live with myself if I lose my job. Because it's going to affect a lot of people, but more importantly, it's going to affect me. I ain't losing my job, so I stay hungry. But the one thing I want to let you know is that the key, in my opinion, to what drives our little company is the people. My head chef at the Carrabba's on Kirby, which is the original, was a dishwasher for me 32 and a half years ago. My executive chef, who's in charge of everything, was a pizza cook for me 32 years ago. My chief accountant and assistant was a little accountant for me 31 years ago. So with the two original Carrabbas, forget the newer stuff that we have, with the two original Carrabbas, the one on Kirby's 32 and a half years ago old. You've already heard that 100 times today. My mother's location at Woodway and Voss, that's 31 years old as of August. We have roughly 220 employees. 110 of that 220 have been with my family for 10 years or longer. So when you look at the strength, they're getting ready to open up some abracios, which is Carrabbas in Mexico. So those people came to look at the original location of the day. When I took that Mexican team into my kitchen and just around, and I would say, hey, this is Juan, 32 years. This is Paula, 28 years. This is Lupe, since day one. And I start going through the lineup, and then I show them a sheet of paper that I got, and 2 sheets of paper with names on there that says, my name's on there, my mother's name's on there, everybody. 32 years, 6 months, 32 years, 32 years, 31 years, 31. Well, it's 110 people have been with us for 10 years or longer. So what we do is we try to run a family-owned business. If you work for a big company nowadays and it's all about the ROI, what do? As soon as somebody starts making a lot of money, is they get rid of them and they hire some young college graduate to replace that person. And I learned this from a man that I thought was just a barfly in my restaurant named Sidney Patterson, right? I didn't know that this man, I thought he was just a guy that just got drunk every night. Nothing wrong with that. That's probably where we're going to be tonight. But anyhow, one day I said, Mr. Patterson, everybody knows what I do. I said, but tell me about yourself. You're so interesting. I used to play golf with a guy and everything, but I didn't know anything about him. Tell me about yourself. He goes, well, Johnny, I went to Wake Forest. I got recruited. I got recruited from Gulf Oil in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He goes, and I ended up working my way up. I ended up working my way up to being the vice president of exploration. I think he's just a guy that just drinks vodka and orange juice, right? I said, well, tell me about that. And he goes, well, the one thing, he's always trying to mentor me or talk to me. I love learning from older people, but he's always talking to me about my business. Just throw it. That's what you do at your club, right? I know she thought about it. So he was always telling me about organizational charts, segregation of duties, job descriptions, always talking to me about it. I'm just a little young guy, man. I'm just trying to roll meatballs for a living, but he was always like that, right? Then when we started talking about his life, he started talking about, Johnny, when I went to work at Gulf Oil, I knew I was going to be there until I retired. I knew I was going to raise my family through that company. I knew I was going to be there forever. He goes, they were an old-fashioned company. He goes, but people nowadays say, oh, these young generations, we could call them the millennials or whatever they called them, the hippies back when I was growing up, whatever. These people aren't the same. And he told me, Mr. Patterson said, the World War II generation was the best generation, everybody says. He goes, well, there's bums back then too. He goes, people are basically people. I said, yes, sir, Mr. Patterson, you know. He goes, do me a favor. When I went to work at Gulf Oil, like I just told you, I knew Gulf Oil was going to be good to me, and I knew I was going to be good to them. He goes, if you're good to your people, they're going to be good back to you. And I would have to say, if, you know, I don't really talk about accomplishments or being successful at all, because I'm in the middle of the hunt. But the thing that brings tears to my eyes almost every time I bring it up, not today, but is when I look at that sheet of paper. I look at those 2 sheets of paper, and I look at all the blood, sweat, and tears that these people put with me. Those people believe in my company more than I believe in it. They've raised their families there. So it's not that I'm affecting 110 people or whatever we have, 600 employees, but I'm affecting their families. And so I would have to say that always keep that in mind when you're running your business. Always know that I can't serve every dish, I can't make every drink, I can't count all the money, I can't do this, I can't do everything. You have to rely on people. And so the more effort you put into those people, like raising children, the more you'll get out of it. Not all of it's going to work out. So I can talk forever, as you can tell. A lot of people want to know, where am I heading? Where's my company heading? What am I thinking? I don't really know. I know that I want to keep my business going as long as I can because of my people and my community. I know I'm going to continue to be part of my community, and don't forget about that when you run your business. You are a neighborhood. If you're in a neighborhood, you need to be part of that neighborhood. So we're very charitable. We're a part of it. It's not about a gimmick like, oh, if I give, I'm going to receive. So I'm going to stop right there. In the hospitality business, you have to have a mentality of giving, like I've said 6 times today. When you give, who does it benefit? Well, I felt like when I give, why do I give? To make you feel good. But I've been corrected by my personal coach, is that's not why you give. So I'm going to say it again. Why do I give? I give to make you feel good. That's not right. I give because it makes me feel good. And so that's what we have to do. But when we're thinking about where we're going with our company, is all I know is that we're going to be family owned until not, but we're going to be family owned and we're going to be a neighborhood business no matter where we go. Does that mean we're going to be perfect? Does that mean we're not going to make any mistakes? Life is nothing but mistakes. But that's what I want to do, is I want to keep my focus with my people. I want to keep our focus on being old-fashioned. Being old-fashioned, there's nothing wrong with being old-fashioned, taking care of your people, taking care of your community. Yes, I want to let you know that everybody likes to make money. But when you do something you love, the money's going to follow. It's just like I tell my son and my daughter who are 19 and 18. I don't care what you do. I mean, I care, you know what I mean? But I don't care. I said, all I want is I want you to do something that you love. If you want to come into the family business and you want to work your butt off, come on. As long as you're happy. If you want to be a fishing guide, which that sounds good to me right now, if you want to be a fishing guide or a social worker or whatever, I don't care. As long as you're doing what you love. And so we're going to stay focused. We don't necessarily have to be the biggest, but again, I want to do it. I want to do it when it's meaningful. And usually I don't look at notes, but I want to make sure, I've already went through everything. People, I can't talk about them enough. My biggest threat, I covered that because it is my biggest threat. My future, I don't know where my future is. If we work hard, Cindy, and y'all start working a little bit on Saturday and Sundays, Chuck, we would be successful, right? But more than anything, I just want to thank y'all for being here today. I appreciate the community always supporting us. This is not a dream come true for me. I just never dreamt it. But the one thing I try to tell my young people, and I'm going to repeat myself one more time, is do the right thing every day. Because you never know who's watching you. You never know who controls your fate. People that do a great job every day have that inner pride, right? That pride that comes from deep inside. So that's really basically, I think, Cindy, did I miss anything? I didn't want to bore y'all too much, but I hope I didn't. But I just want to thank y'all very much for having me here today. Appreciate you. And if there's any questions, I'm not going anywhere. Any questions?
How did you balance work and life at the beginning, and how is it different now?
Balance. Well, when I first opened up, there was no balance. It was, I'm not. I don't have. You're not my children, so I don't have to lie to y'all about how much I worked. But it was 115 to 118 hours every week, 7 days a week. It was sick for 2 years. Not one, I would say, there's really no exaggeration. This almost every dish that came out of that little restaurant came through my hands. Not that I cooked it all. I didn't cook that, but I was running my kitchen. I closed the restaurant down with my dishwashers and my busters every night. I had a busboy drive me home with my car, took me home every night, and picked me up in the morning. His name was Oliverio. There was no balance at all. Then things started getting really balanced, and then I got in business with Outback, and it got out of balance again because I was traveling a lot then. And then right now, I think that's my biggest challenge is balancing, because if I'm not at work, I feel guilty. There's always something to do. I've been playing a little golf lately, and I don't feel like I'm working enough. So balance. I think when you're young, you don't worry about balance. I think you worry about making a career, putting your time in. Everybody has to put their time in, and then you worry about balance. But this is not going to sound very good, because I was going to put it in our cookbook, and the people that were doing the cookbook with us said it didn't sound real positive. But I have a saying: I don't know anybody real successful that works a 40-hour work week. I mean, you might say, "Hey, I work 40 hours a week and I do damn good." Well, that's fine, but I don't think people reach the pinnacle of their field. That's the way I feel. So sometimes you have to watch what I say, but I'm not running for political office. So I think hard work, man. You work when you're young, you learn your trade, you become professional, and then you worry about balance later, and then you might have the opportunity to be real balanced later. Any other questions?
So speaking of work-life balance, I'm the same way. I've grown up with a father that's an entrepreneur. My mother was an entrepreneur, so we're all kind of crazy. I've got 2 businesses I own, one that has a business partner. And the part that I've yet to get out of him, I mean, I'm a 80 to 100-hour work week. I love it. Doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
He's a 30 to 40-hour work. We actually complained recently because he had a 4-hour day that was tough. And I was like, what? How do you love him to death? He's an awesome guy, but how do you balance that?
You have to almost let go. I'm not a real good partner. Me and Damien, he's not my partner anymore, but he's my uncle, and we have a partnership in our Outback deal, but that's nothing. We don't do anything with that. It's just kind of a franchise agreement. But I made a decision. Like I said, I turned 60 in December, and I had a partner in a bakery called Common Bomb Bakery, and our philosophies were different. He's a great guy, but he likes to grow fast and unload, and mine's more of a personal business. And I decided that at this stage of my career, I don't have partners, and I don't really want partners. I think you have to let go. Partners are good. Me and Damien made a great partnership because he was the mastermind and I was the operator, the managing partner of the company. I think there has to be, it's kind of partnership. I think the last time I checked is a marriage. And I think communication is very important. Not that I'm an expert, but I think that communication is very important. Expectations, there's always going to be somebody that's going to be working harder than the other. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I just think that you have to communicate, and if it bothers you, I think it's something you have to talk about. And then when you make other decisions, you might not be a partnership kind of guy. I know I'm not. It doesn't mean that I'm right or anything, but I just don't. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I know it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You mentioned your number one fear was the loss of culture. So how do you ensure that you keep the culture within your restaurants and it reflecting to all your businesses?
That's a great question. One thing, I have to stay focused. I have to remember, like I'm giving y'all like small cliff notes to what we do in business, right? Hiring is so important. Training is so important. Staying fresh, evolving, just because my fundamentals or our fundamentals might be the same, we've evolved over the years. Technically we had to evolve, right? The other thing is that 20% of our bigger restaurants and full service restaurants, 20% of our dining is car side carryout. That wasn't there. So to answer the question about how do I combat the loss of culture, is that I move with the times, I evolve, but my core beliefs and our company's core beliefs we have to focus in on them. If I do not hire the right way, or I say I, but I'm talking about we, but when we don't hire, when we don't love and put attention to people, if we don't hold people accountable, if we get away from being, if we start being cute and get away from our core beliefs, and so I combat it by staying very adamant and focused on what I believe in or what we believe in, right? It's easy to get sidetracked. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I mean, I think you have to be very stubborn, you know? Companies like, you know, I really admire family-owned businesses. I mean, like Whataburger up until about a month ago, Chick-fil-A, Pappas organization, but you know, when I talk about Chick-fil-A, it's a chain restaurant. I love it. It's family-owned, but they're adamant about what they believe in. They're not going to open up on Sundays. They don't care what anybody says. But more importantly is that that's a big company, but they keep preaching and they don't accept anything but their way. And so I can't soften up and say, oh, I have to deal with the millennials. Nothing, I mean, I'm a father to millennials. Nothing against it, but I can't give in to, oh, it's okay, you know, if you want to show up late, and it's okay if you don't want to worry about a uniform standard. It's okay if you don't want to learn your materials. No, you have to. You know, and one thing that I forgot to tell y'all is that I really believe that knowledge is very powerful. And this probably has nothing to do with your question. Knowledge is very powerful. And what knowledge does, and what I tell my people is, what knowledge does, it gives you something that's very important. It gives you confidence, right? If Tiger Woods has the knowledge of the grip, the stance, the posture, everything, and he makes that shot over and over with great fundamentals, he knows the shot, he knows how to make the swing, well then he has confidence, right? And knowledge and confidence is a powerful combination, but it's not the key to your success. I know a lot of people that are very knowledgeable, that are kind of confident, cocky, and arrogant, but they're lacking a key ingredient. And that key ingredient is enthusiasm. But if you have the knowledge, which builds the confidence, and on top of it, you throw enthusiasm, attitude, whatever you want to say, but enthusiasm, and I learned this from my godfather, Rocco Vallone, is he says enthusiasm is a hard thing to beat. And so to hold on to culture, since we're a neighborhood restaurant, we want to know your name. We want to know your family's name. You're a part of our family when you come in, right? And so I can't let go. I can't let go. I have to keep hiring people and embedding in people about the warmth and love and hospitality that givers have. So I'm not going to let go. So I hope I answer something. I'm long-winded. I'm sorry.
Sorry, follow-up question to that. I mean, you mentioned that you don't really like chain restaurants or anything like that, but how do you make sure, I guess, do you have any advice on keeping the consistency if it's, say, were a chain restaurant?
Say that now?
Keeping the consistency of the culture in a chain restaurant, if you have any advice on that.
Well, okay. Stephen Jobs, right? If you ever Google him and listen to some of his speeches, he was a very deep thinker. And he always said that a company is born with a very passionate founder, visionary. Then what they do is they have just one thing in mind: the guest, the customer, the consumer, and their people. And then what happens that the next generation of a business goes into financial. Okay, but the founder's still there. But then the next generation of a business, the third generation, is financial with marketing. And I love finance because I was almost an accountant. I'm 18 hours short of my degree. I love accounting, and I'm really I'm really impressed with marketing, right? But I can't let those departments tell me what I'm going to do with food and service and that sort of thing. And so I think that Outback Steakhouse is I think it was even a great back when, and I hope nobody's here from there, but I think it was great because the founders were all about food, service, cleanliness, atmosphere, principles and beliefs and all that stuff. But then what happened was is they started answering to Wall Street. And so I could get myself in a little trouble, but I'm okay with it, is whenever you let the initials ROI, which I barely know what that means, but when you let return on investment dictate on what you're going to do, you're not going to be a good chain restaurant. You're not going to be a good mom and pop. You ain't going to be good at nothing. You have to make sure that you put the product on the table, you have enough service to cover it, you make sure you have enough labor to keep that restaurant clean, you have ample managers, and I'm just saying it's a kiss of death. And that's what's wrong, and I don't think restaurants should be on the public market because there's too much scrutiny to the investors. And you have a responsibility to the investors. Don't get me started. But anyhow.
Thank you.
I didn't answer any of your questions. But you got to be strong-minded, stubborn. You know what I mean?
Got it.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to keep you longer.
No.
So going back to what you said about hiring, right? The market for restaurants, you know, the workforce, it's different everywhere else. I think as we're starting business, we like to research the experts. They say hire slow, right? You said hiring was very important. But how can you hire slow when every interview has potentially 5, 6, 7 job offers?
Well, it's become a problem that we have a hard time even, with our people, our servers or cooks, they make, good money. We believe in that. But it's hard to hire nowadays. So I think it's, it's just hard to get people in the door. But I still think you have to be very selective. So ask me the question again and I'll stay focused on the question. Ask me a question one more time.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a different question.
I have ADD, DDD.
How did you hire at the beginning versus how do you hire now?
Well, pretty much basically the same. I mean, now our people, they go through background checks and they look at, resumes and things like that. When I first started, since I was like the only person really there, I just had people sit at tables and I'd go interview them. If they made eye contact and I feel like they had the gift of gab, I kind of looked to see if they were genuine, or if they were just full of it. I'd be lying if I told you appearance didn't make a difference. How did they dress for that interview? Did they taking it serious? And that's how I hired. It wasn't scientific. Then we got in business with Outback, and they had all the testing and all that stuff. Well, the best, and they call that pattern interviewing, the best pattern interview I've ever had in my life was the worst person I ever hired. So I didn't really pay attention to that. But I think you have to get a gut feel on the hiring. But it's a tough market to hire now. Very tough market, I don't know. I think people are really going into, more of the technical jobs. So probably didn't answer your question, but it's not scientific at our company at all. All right, well, I want to thank you all very much for being here. Appreciate you. Thank you.